Egg. Egg. As you probably already know, there are rumors that there are dragon eggs in the crypts of Winterfell. Not just rumors from fans, but in-world rumors. Some people in the story believe that there are dragon eggs in the crypts of Winterfell. My question is not whether there are dragon eggs in the crypts, but whether or not those eggs have already hatched. We're going to geek out on this one by sourcing clues from the new book, Fire and Blood, as well as the novellas, The Hedge Knight, The Mystery Knight, The World of Ice and Fire, and A Dance with Dragons. Let's start with the in-world rumor, which stems from Mushroom's testimony. Mushroom claimed that when Jacaerys Velaryon flew up to Winterfell during the Dance of the Dragons, his dragon, Vermax, laid eggs in the depths of Winterfell's crypts. So that's the foundation, but we're also going to look at a few other items. While working summer, Bran saw a snake or a dragon flying over Winterfell, and in the show, Bran had a vision of a dragon flying over King's Landing. Prince Daeron dreamed of a dead dragon falling on Sir Duncan the Tall, and Daemon II Blackfyre dreamed of an egg hatching at Whitehalls. To analyze Mushroom's Vermax claim, let's start with a key moment in the Dance of the Dragons, the moment when the Blacks were weighing the option of attacking King's Landing. Since Sunfire was wounded near Rook's Rest and unable to fly, Tessarion was with Prince Daeron in Old Town, and Queen Helena spent her days in darkness, weeping, and surely could not be counted as a threat on Dreamfire. That left only Vhagar, whom the Blacks could oppose with Vermax, Syrax, and Caraxes. But Mushroom suggested that they find more dragons, alluding to the 3 riderless dragons on Dragonstone. However, when Mushroom said the word dragons, he was explicitly referring to the riders, not the dragons themselves. Mushroom was using the word dragon as a metaphor for people with Valyrian blood. So that's the first example of wordplay. Dragons as a metaphor for humans with Valyrian blood, people such as Targaryens, Velaryons, and Dragon Seeds. Basically, Targaryen.
Busted. These bastards were called the Dragon Seeds, though most were called Supper.
Most prophetic dreams also include metaphors. Since the future is already written, the ink is dry. Visions include metaphors as the universe's way of protecting itself. Future visions have to be tricky, otherwise people could alter their future and create another timeline.
When the sun rises in the west, sets in the east. When the seas go dry, when the mountains blow in the wind like leaves.
Here are 2 examples of metaphors in NonDragon Dreams. The ghost of Highheart dreamed of a maid at a feast with purple serpents in her hair, venom dripping from their fangs, and that same maid slaying a savage giant in a castle built of snow. The venomous serpents represented the poison that Sansa was unknowingly carrying, the Strangler, the poison that was used to take out Joffrey. And the savage giant in a castle of snow was a metaphor for Littlefinger at Winterfell, since Littlefinger's parent sigil was the Titan of Braavos. Similarly, Daeron the Drunk dreamt of a dead dragon falling on Sir Duncan the Tall, and it turns out that dead dragon was a Targaryen, an awesome Targaryen, Baelor Breakspear, heir to the Iron Throne, the Hammer. So think about that dragon that flew over Winterfell. Was it really a dragon? Probably not. It was probably a metaphor for Jon Snow. We'll get back to this. Similarly, Bran had that vision of a dragon flying over King's Landing in the show. But that dragon was probably a metaphor for either Dany, Jon, Gendry, or even Cersei or Jaime. Not a literal dragon, just someone with Valyrian blood. Probably Dany. Okay, now let's get to the crux of this analysis. Daemon II Blackfyre, he had visions. He dreamt of his brothers dying, and they died. He also dreamt of an egg hatching at Whitehalls. Now, the egg that Lord Butterwell was offering as a prize to the tourney, that egg never hatched, but an egg of a different sort did hatch. In the prior novella, The Sworn Sword, and the majority of this novella, The Mystery Knight, Dunk and future King Aegon V are wandering around Westeros. Aegon is acting as Dunk's squire. So they're dirty, they're eating poorly, they're living the life of a hedge knight and his squire. But when this final installment ends, Aegon was freshly bathed and garbed in princely raiment, as would befit a nephew of the king. There's a scene with Bloodraven, who was hand of the king at the time. Little Aegon is a bit mouthy to Bloodraven, who tells Dunk, "Your squire is insolent, sir. You ought to beat that out of him." "I've tried, my lord. He's a prince, though." "What he is," said Bloodraven, "is a dragon." Quote, Daemon dreamed that a dragon would be born at Whitehalls, and it was. The fool just got the color wrong. Not a Blackfyre, but a true-born Targaryen. So in case it's not clear, Bloodraven, who we know to be a Greenseer. He understands that Daemon's visions were a metaphor for a Targaryen. Keep in mind, Aegon was pretending to be a squire. He was keeping his identity secret, and to do this, he shaved his head, so that people wouldn't recognize his Targaryen hair. Because of this, his head looked kind of like an egg, so Aegon was going by the name Egg. Aegon had been dirty, eating poorly, and living the life of a squire to a hedge knight. Yet, as this novella ends, Egg is freshly bathed and garbed in princely raiment, as would befit a nephew of the king. In other words, Daemon's visions did come true. A dragon egg did hatch at Whitehall's, but it was not a literal dragon egg. It was a metaphor for a Targaryen, who just so happens to have been using the name Egg, future King Aegon V, fourth son of a fourth son. In the books, when Aemon tells Jon,
"Kill the boy, and let the man be born,"
it's part of a larger conversation about Aegon, or Egg. How Egg had an innocence to him, a sweetness that they had all loved. But it takes a man to rule, an Aegon, not an egg. Kill the boy, and let the man be born. Lo and behold, Jon's given name is Aegon as well. So if we go back to that dragon that Bran saw fly over Winterfell, it was probably a metaphor for Jon Snow, or
Aegon Targaryen.
Now let's go back to Vermax. Mushroom claims that Jace flew up to Winterfell during the Dance of the Dragons, and his dragon Vermax laid a clutch of eggs somewhere in the depths of Winterfell's crypts, where the waters of the hot springs run close to the walls. This is where the fan theory about a dragon in the crypt stems from, a dragon heating up the hot springs. But most likely, Winterfell's just built over volcanic activity or something similar. The Westerosi Ninja explained it pretty well on his channel. He has a PhD in geology or something wild like that. He's a wizard. So, I don't believe there's a dragon down in the crypts of Winterfell, but I do believe that a dragon hatched down there. In the new book, Fire and Blood, we got more information about Jace's trip up to Winterfell. There's a rumor that Jace deflowered a girl named Sarah Snow. Considering all these metaphors of dragons and eggs relating to humans with Valyrian blood, and factoring in the Bael the Bard story, where a Stark girl gave birth to someone down in the crypts, I suspect that Mushroom's being cheeky here. Vermax did not lay eggs in the crypts. What Mushroom is really alluding to is that Vermax's rider, Jace, hopped on the good foot and did the bad thing with Sarah Snow. They made love down in the crypts of Winterfell.
Dragon eggs.
Dragon eggs. Dragon's eggs.
And think about the beauty in this, a Valyrian Targaryen and a Stark bastard. It would parallel Rhaegar and Lyanna, because they also sang a song of ice and fire. And it would parallel Bael the Bard and the Rose of Winterfell, since it happened in the Winterfell Crypts. Now, we can explore this topic down the road in terms of who was that child, and did a descendant of that child ever marry its way into House Stark? Or does the bloodline find its way to Illyrio Mopatis's beloved Sarah? Maybe, but those are topics for another day. What we're really getting at here is that Vermax thing may have been misleading. It may have referred to humans making babies, figurative dragons, hatching eggs down in the crypts of Winterfell. This concept is strengthened if you consider the descriptive parallels between Whitehall's and Winterfell, castles made of snow. Aegon, or Egg, hatched at Whitehall's, and a new egg is about to hatch in Season 8.
His name is Aegon Targaryen.
Egg. I dreamed that I was old.